Hello, guys, and welcome to the Nigerian Abroad podcast. This is season 3. Woo! First episode. And I'm not gonna lie, um, when I was booking the studio, I was just like, I don't think I realized that this is now going to be solo from now on because it's very different. It's a different vibe because I'm just going to be sat here. Yeah, I said sat here. I'm just going to be sat here talking to myself and then knowing that, okay, there is like an engineer at the back listening to me talk, but then it's still like somewhat me feeling like I'm talking to myself. Anyway, I'm very excited, very scared, but I think I've gotten to the point in my life where I am just trying to get used to the uncomfortable feeling of doing things out of my comfort zone. So, here's to that. And here's to season 3 of the Nigerian Abroad podcast. Welcome. What would you expect from this season? I would say there would be a lot more solo podcasts, solo episodes with me talking, and I rant a lot, guys. I feel deeply about a lot of things, and I just realized that why not just talk about it? I mean, you've experienced something, so why don't you just talk about it and stuff? And so like the average Nigerian, generally the podcast is about the immigrant experience, but the average Nigerian, and somewhat the average immigrant, we tend to belittle our challenges and make light of it, and we joke about it. We're like, ha ha ha! Oh my gosh, the UK has done this again about the immigration policies, about the immigration laws. What do we do? Oh my gosh! And then we adjust, and it's just the whole thing of the boiling frog scenario, where you are in a pot of boiling water, but the frog always has to adjust its temperature, but it adjusts so much that it doesn't realize that it's slowly boiling to death. Not saying that death bit was a bit morbid, but you get the point. Like, there are a lot of things happening as an immigrant. There are a lot of things we experience and we have taken to be normal that are not supposed to be normal. Even if they are normal, it's still something that is worth talking about. So the essence and the point of this podcast going forward would be to talk about the immigrant experience, to have conversations about these things, to create a relatable space, to create a community. So you know that, bruh, you're not the only one going through this thing. It is a shared experience. But beyond that, I think it is also something to create empathy in the non-immigrant. Because it is one thing for somebody to be like, oh, that's an immigrant, this person has moved to my country, blah, blah, blah. But it's another thing for them to understand what it truly means to be an immigrant in a country. Sure, it's the whole thing of, oh, they're coming into our country. Some of them say they're taking our jobs and all of that. But the immigrant experience affects not only your mental, physical, spiritual, also affects your career. And I think that is something worth talking about. So going forward in the podcast, what we're going to be doing is talking about every aspect of the immigrant life, every single thing that affects us, down to career, down to making money, down to buying a house, down to getting married, down to your everyday life, life on the tube, life on the bus, how every single change and every single policy affects the immigrant. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to speaking more and using my voice, lending my voice, however little that voice is, but lending my voice to something as grand and as big as that. But I'm not going to go much into it without actually talking about the origin of the Nigerian Abroad podcast. And it started in 2019, but not as a podcast. So for people who are not aware, I don't know say if I was a dancer or if I'm still a dancer. Well, I was invited to perform with a youth group in Egypt. It was like an all expense, one of the most memorable moments of my life. It was an all expense paid trip. So Egypt, I'm not sure that program is still happening, but it was called the World Youth Forum. and they would get youth from all over the world to attend a conference for 3 days, all paid. You stay in one of the nicest hotels, meals paid for, and then you attend conferences like to further your career and all. So that was like the general public. As an artist, I was invited to perform. So the general people who would, and I'm calling them general, but like attendees, yes, that's the word. So the attendees were there for 3 days, and I was there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think, 3 weeks, because we were rehearsing and training and all the other things. So it was like a musical theater kind of play thing. That was my first experience in musical theater, by the way. And all I knew was dance, so I had to like sing, act, and dance, and that was very interesting. So I was chosen. I made the application, and I was chosen to perform. And so I flew over to Egypt. It was paid for. I think the Egyptian government then was paying for it. Applied for my the visa story itself is even another thing entirely. But I feel like the whole situation of Nigerians applying for the Egyptian visa or Nigerians in Egypt is, I think it's a whole another podcast episode, and I'm not going to go into that. But I got my visa, and then I traveled to Egypt, and it was a fun experience. I met so many people there, and I met people from Colombia, people from Spain, people from Pakistan. I met somebody from Malaysia, I met someone from Syria, and it was very interesting to hear their stories, their life as artists, and then having like other jobs to support. Apparently, the art sector is underfunded everywhere. So anyway, it was very interesting to hear their story and hear their take on things. And when I would talk about Nigeria, not even in the whole, oh my gosh, I'm on Nigeria, but just talk about Nigeria where I'm from. One thing about me, I take a lot of pride in being Nigerian. My friends would think it's a lie, but whenever I am at work, because I work mostly with British people and white folk, I am very proud to talk about Nigeria. I'm very proud to talk about how rich the culture is. I'm very proud to talk about like the little things, even something as ridiculously funny as juju. I am like, this is it. It's just like when white folk talk about their dogs. That's literally me when I'm talking about Nigeria. But the thing is, when I watched them talk about their countries and then I talked about my own country, I realized how much I had to say. I realized how much I like to talk about Nigeria. I realized how much I like being a Nigerian in other countries. And I was like, I want to do something about it. I don't know what it's going to be. At that time, I was knee deep in telling my story as a dancer. So I was like, I want to talk about something relating to traveling. There are loads of travel blogs and vlogs, and it was mostly the aesthetic stuff. And I don't know if I have energy for the aesthetics. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to wish. It's nice to hope to be able to achieve that kind of thing. But I'm too lazy to achieve that. So I knew I wanted to tell a story. I knew I was going to tell my story. I was already very good at telling stories anyway because I was sharing my dance journey. So it was one of the evenings when we had our rehearsals, and then I was like, I want to keep doing this. I mean, I don't really like traveling, but I'm like, I want to keep talking about Nigeria. And so I sat down. I don't think I was actively thinking about doing it. Maybe I was. And then I was just thinking, if I had a vlog, if I had a blog, if I had something, what do I call it? And it just came to me, the Nigerian abroad. And I was like, okay. All I had was a name, by the way. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know what it was going to be about. I didn't know what platform I was going to use to tell the story. And so that was it. But knowing me and whatever is wrong with me, I would just have that in mind and not do anything about it. So this was 2019 in December. I got back to Nigeria. We were promised that we were going to perform again in January in Egypt, but that trip didn't happen because of COVID. Everywhere was shut down. So I just put my head down, focused on the main issue at hand, trying to get abroad to train in dance. So I was applying, and the school I think I applied for like 2-3 times finally accepted me. Took the very horrible route by hiring an agent. He messed that up for me. So my professional dance dreams of training actually went down the drain. And then the other option he brought up was, oh, do your master's in the UK, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't my first choice, but I was just like, you know what? I actually any opportunity that I can get to be in a professional dance class, I'll take it. And so I did that. And then I came to the UK, and boy, was I shocked at how hard it is to do anything being an immigrant. And I mean, there's just so many things that you cannot unpack everything in one episode, in 2 episodes, in 3 episodes. But that year went by. COVID was a very rough year. Imagine, like I came to the UK in October 2020. So imagine traveling in the heat of COVID. Immediately I landed, I was just put in isolation straight, 2 weeks. Like that was it. And then, okay, now you have to look for a job. No jobs because everything is all locked up, blah, blah, blah. Story for another day. And then the year went by. I think I sort of kind of maybe probably found my feet. And it was the year 2023. And then my friend and I, former co-host, we would always just talk about whatever was going on in our lives. And it would always come down to immigration, being an immigrant. Like, I can literally say I boiled rice today and it tasted funny. And we're like, it's because, like, obviously that's an extreme example. But everything we would talk about, everything we would rant about, and I even ranted about this to other friends as well. But then I just realized that everything was just down to it. And I said to her, I was like, let's start a podcast. And I remember her first reaction was like, what? What are we going to talk about now? I was like, chill. We already talk about it anyway. And I just said, it's going to be called the Nigerian Abroad podcast. We'll just rant and everything. And then she was down for it. And then we started planning and all. And then that was a very beautiful chapter. And I'm very happy that actually went down between the two of us. And then when that chapter ended, obviously now I'm by myself and I'm like, okay. So the whole journey leading to this point was just I feel like it's very significant. I feel like I have always been meant to do this, regardless of whatever route I've taken. And I think I'm quite pleased that the medium I'm doing this is a podcast, because there's so many ways I could have gone, but I don't know if I have the the patience to make it aesthetic enough and be this vlogger and talk about that and all, because there are times when I get raw and I feel things and I'm like, I don't know if you know, like when you felt something, I was like 12, 13 and I just said to my mom, I'm going to travel abroad. And you know when your parents are like, amen, you travel abroad. And I was like, no, I'm going to travel abroad. Like I remember saying to her that I would either go to a private university or I would travel abroad for my uni. I mean, I eventually had both of them, but this is going to be in an episode that's coming out, I think, next week. So one of our guests, I spoke to her, and it was literally about like her deciding to move back, and which is very strange because a lot of us would be like, oh my gosh, how are you moving back? Ew. And I sat down with her and I talked to her about like what was going on in her mind and all of that and stuff. And then something I said was, I've always wanted to move abroad, mostly because of the fact that, you know how here in the UK, when you have neighbors, you don't have to like greet your neighbors, you don't have to say hi to anybody. To me, that's one of the best things, because I don't have to interact with anybody. I had issues with that growing up because, call it being introverted, ADHD, whatever, something on the spectrum. I just never understood why. I get the respect bit, but I never understood why I'd be in my room or shared siblings' room, reading a novel, I'm deep into it, and then this very loud auntie just comes, hi Jay, don't want to come and greet me. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I honestly would feel like somebody would like is pressing my brains together because I never understood that concept and it never appealed to me. Like, come out and greet this person. Not even as a sign of disrespect. Like, I never disrespected them. I just wanted to be on my own most of the times. And sadly, that's not a concept that a lot of African parents, aunties, and uncles understand. So, a bit of my childhood was hard because I just felt like I did not fit in per se. But now I'm saying it out loud. I'm saying, like, if I say I did not fit in Nigeria, it sounds very privileged and all. But I didn't watch it anywhere to be like, oh, this child doesn't greet his parents. Why do you not greet it? It was just something that I just realized I never liked doing. And I was like, why do people want to do it? Anyway, I'd always wanted to move, but what I realized was that move came with survivor's guilt. And survivor's guilt is something that I feel like I have been struggling with since I moved to the UK. For me, the concept just comes from, I think I'm doing better than everybody and I don't deserve to be doing better than everybody. Like, who sends me work to do better? Like, somebody else come and take my place. And every time, I mean, like, when I speak to my family, when I speak to my friends, they're doing amazing. But I've just put this picture in my head that why did I get to be the one to travel abroad and not somebody else? Why am I the one that has to be the one here? I'm grateful for this opportunity, but occasionally having survivor's guilt is one of the things that I feel like plagues an immigrant. To this day, I think the funniest concept to me is when you land, like for the UK, I'm not sure about any other country, but when you land and you need somewhere to stay. But in order to rent a flat, you need a bank account. But to open a bank account, you need an address. And then you're now in this, where do I get bank account from? Thank God for Monzo. I mean, because I feel like Monzo is one of the banks that has really helped immigrants, because when I landed, I wanted to open a bank account, and actually, Monzo didn't help me, but it helped other people. So I'm just saying my own case is very peculiar. So I had to open Lloyd's because something happened with my Monzo account. So I had to open a Lloyd's bank account. And then Lloyd's, they were like, where is your address? And I'm like, I don't have one. I just got here. They're like, well, you need an address. And then I was in that weird cycle for like 2 weeks before somebody then said, oh, actually, you can just use your university address. I'm like, wow, you should have told me that sooner. But sure. Like, I could have avoided the whole thing and all. So I was just carrying cash around because my mother gave me my rent money for like the term. And so I was just holding the cash. And like, obviously, as I declared it, I was like, this is how much I'm getting into the country with. I don't have a bank account. So this is how much I'm with. I was just holding it like, Jesus, 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 Jesus. And then that was how I was with. But then it's that whole thing of I didn't have enough to hold on to. So when I landed, I was put in isolation. Thankfully, my university was providing like 2 weeks isolation for students. So I was thankfully did not have to pay accommodation for 2 weeks, and I was able to sort out my life. But in those 2 weeks, I needed to buy things. I needed to buy food. I needed to buy what I would eat and all. And I was just looking at that money that was supposed to be for my rent, and I was just like, I'm seeing it here. I'm going to spend this money. Somehow I didn't. I mean, I think there was like an extra 50 or so that I was able to use and hold myself for those 2 weeks. And then I was able to get that. But I think that every time I speak to somebody about how was your experience when you came here, especially people who didn't like have somebody waiting for them, like with like a home or something like that. The rest of us that just came and we had to figure out our lives and stuff like that. It's always very interesting to hear it because they're like, oh, Mo, that's how I did this thing and did this thing. I didn't have accommodation. I ever heard somebody had to pay had to live in an Airbnb for I think 2-3 weeks before they were able to get accommodation, because student accommodation is very expensive. And then you have to get like a normal accommodation, but then landlords sometimes are just asses. So you have to now like jump through hoops. Nobody's willing to house you. At least you don't know anybody that's going to house you. So you're paying what could have been your rent money as an Airbnb fare, and then you finally get rent. It's just I think I can go on and on, and I don't want to get into that, because this is just the beginning of the season, and I don't want to seem as if I'm always ranting about things, even though I always am. But I think I'm very excited. I said excited too many times. But I am excited. Very terrified, if you couldn't tell that my voice was shaking the whole time. But I'm very excited and terrified at the same time, because I'm excited. I'm excited to grow this community. I'm excited to see how much we can do and how much we can talk about. And I'm just very interested in the stories. And I think the best part of being an immigrant is meeting somebody. I'm like, you too? Oh my gosh, me too. Like, you too, you did that, me too. Like, so it's very another thing is also seeing the horror on my coworkers' face when I tell them this is what happened. They're like, no. I'm like, yeah. It's very intriguing to see that our lives are not normal, because I'll just say something like, oh, no. I'm looking for an example to say. The only thing I think of is like the 5-10 year route. Oh yeah, I'll just say, okay, something like to apply for like a Schengen visa, I have to buy the flights, I have to pay for the hotel, I have to show that I have X amount in my account, I have to show my company employment letter. And you would see the horror on their face. They're like, and I'm like, yeah, so yes, all because I want to go on vacation. And I mean, if I want to go on a vacation in summer, I have to start planning right now. And I think that's like that's very funny. But it's going to be a very good season. It's going to be a very fun, insightful season. I'm looking forward to growth. I'm looking forward to entertainment, but I'm also looking forward to building a community with you guys. And I cannot wait for that to happen. Thank you guys for watching the Nigerian Abroad podcast. As always, thank you for watching up until this point, even though I was rambling most of the time. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. We are on every platform. You can listen to us on every podcast platform that there is. We are on there. And we are on Instagram, we are on X, we are on TikTok. We are on Substack. Subscribe to our newsletter. Have a lovely day, guys. Bye.